Hey guys, you're now listening to the Coaches Network podcast, a podcast aimed at anyone who's passionate about athlete, talent, and personal development. My name's CoachYas, and I'm a UEFA A-licensed football coach developer, and content creator. I'll be sitting down with a range of guests to discuss their journeys, their life lessons, and how you can make an impact. Enjoy. Coaches Network. My name is CoachYas, and today I'm joined by my co-host Ben, as usual. But we've got a very special guest in the building with us today, or on Zoom with us today, shall I say. Mark Warburton, first team manager at QPR. How are you, Mark?
Very well, yeah, very well, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for being on the show with us today. Mark, I'm not going to waste any time. We'll get straight into it. Let listeners and ourselves know even where did the coaching journey start? Because it's quite an interesting one.
It started really. I guess I was a young professional at Leicester for a couple of years, and then different background in the city, which you know about, and then for me, really, it was playing conference football. And traveling with the bank, living in Charlotte in North Carolina, living in Chicago, working in New York, working in Asia. Wherever I went, I just coached, not through a direct aim to do so, more just purely by chance. You know, in Charlotte, I would coach the bank team, or I'd coach the village team, or I'd coach, I'd see some girls under 9s or kids under 11s, and you just end up coaching them. In those days, if you spoke with a British accent, they assumed you played football, therefore you must be able to coach, was almost the guideline. So I found myself unwittingly coaching a number of different age groups, high schools, UNCs, and different levels of player. And that went right the way through. I go back to London and worked, obviously, then overseas against Chicago in '96. And it wasn't until 2001 when my son, who was then 8, was asked to go to Watford Academy, and the coaches talked about background and did you play and whatever else, and they asked me what badge I had, and literally I had no idea, excuse my ignorance, about qualifications. So that was it really, as that was the blue touch paper being lit, and from that moment on I quickly got my 1, 2 and 3, worked hard to get on my level 4, my A license, and now I'm working part-time at Watford at the same time as being in the city. So combine a really heavy workload, but when you have that ambition now, and you've got that burning desire to make a career change, you had to have that period of transition. But that was it. So from there, I was confident. I got my A license. I'm now in a good position. I wanted to leave the city in a well-paid job, but I knew I had to also improve my knowledge depth. So I spent a year traveling around Europe. Literally cold calling a number of clubs, just literally phoning the front desk, can I speak to the account director, please? No, 50 times, 60 times, and finally you get through. And it was Sporting Lisbon, a really good friend called Diogo Matos at Sporting Lisbon, got me in. And once the doors opened, once that persistence gets paid off, I suppose, then he opened doors to Ajax and to PSV and to Barcelona and Dortmund. And suddenly I find myself visiting some of the biggest clubs in Europe for a year and just really improving my knowledge and depth of education.
And just on that, you talk to about how difficult that can be, 50 plus cold calls or emails, whatever you want, not getting any opportunities, sometimes not even getting a response to even say, we can't do anything for you. Just sometimes getting complete,
No, complete blanks. I mean, and without being rude to these clubs, they must get numerous such requests, and I'm saying, can I come and speak to someone for half an hour? Because I'm thinking to myself that I've got a different background, but a competitive one in terms of finance. Therefore, I can share something with them. So I knew that if I could get in front of them, I could hopefully sell myself. Not in an arrogant way, but I was confident of that. But it's getting in front of them, yes. And I understand that people phone, I must get, 5, 6 requests a day to come and visit. And you have to be polite, respectful, but you can't accept all of these offers because you're too busy. So I understand exactly where they were, and I'm very thankful. And Diogo was literally, do you play golf? Yes. Get yourself over here. Sport Lisbon Golf Day tomorrow. Be my partner. That gives you 5 hours with me. And he was just saying that I maximise his time, 5 hours on a golf course. And that was it. We got on great. We played golf. I beat him down the last, which went down really well with him. And but from that moment on, I spent a week there, flew back home, went back for a second week. And really got to know him as a really good friend who opened so many doors. He's now working for FIFA in a really high position. But as I say, it just goes to show you that if you are persistent, hopefully you get your break.
Definitely. I think just another thing that I kind of want to pick up on that you touched there about that confidence that you need to have within yourself. And I think there's a lot of coaches probably listening to this, maybe not too sure where they should be confident with, or what they should be confident with within themselves. You just talk to about what it was about that particular skill set that you felt that you would really kind of build that confidence in. And was that something that you felt that was transferable from your banking background? And
yeah, absolutely, 100%. I'll say that because I'll give an example. When I came back from Charlotte, North Carolina, it was 1986, and I've been over there, and I was offered a green card to stay in the States. But I wanted to come back to London because of the time zone. London's such a big financial centre because of obviously many reasons, but the beauty of the time zone. You know, you get Asia's afternoon, you get all of Europe's morning, you get New York coming in, and then you get LA in the afternoon. And so it's a perfect time zone. And I wanted to be in that time zone. So I came back and they gave me a currency pair. I was trading currencies, buying one currency, selling another. And they gave me dollars against Japanese yen, dollar yen. And they had no natural business. They had no core customers in that currency pair. So I'm sitting at a desk. When you go away overseas, you come back, sometimes you're a spare part. So I came back and I cold called all the Japanese banks and Asian banks, Singapore, Hong Kong, and I couldn't get anything. You know, but I'm talking about 5 months. I'm cold calling every day, getting frustrated, couldn't get anything. And then finally I flew over there, got a visit by chance. Someone dropped out, got a visit. And I went over there and I took over. They all play golf and they all love whiskey. That's basically, in those days, that was the Japanese senior bankers. They all loved their golf and always talk about their famous nips of whiskey. So I just went there armed with sleeves of golf balls and as much whiskey as I could take through duty free at the time. And that was it. And I came back and literally the first Monday back, my screen lit up with dollar yen calls out of Asia because you've taken the time to go and see them. So that the people strength, you know, they really appreciate you going out there and taking that time. Emails, texts, WhatsApps are too easy. You've got to go and look people in the face, in the eye to eye, the old saying. So I'd done that in the city. So for me in football, I just needed to get in front of them. A bit like getting to Japan, getting to Tokyo.
Do you think that approach could still work? Because, you know, obviously, like I said, it's becoming increasingly harder. Obviously, the market in terms of competitiveness of coaches trying to get in the industry, I think, has inflated massively over recent years. With, you know, everyone left, right, and centre trying to become the next big coach, or trying to get into the academy program, or even to the elite game at the senior level. Do you think that approach can still work, or do you think there's maybe some strategies that maybe have been gone up, you know, a bit outdated in that respect? You know, I think even down to from sending an email to, you know, even just sending the odd letter. Do you think maybe sending a letter to someone could still have a good effect?
When was the last time you received a handwritten letter?
Well, this is why I asked. Yeah.
I don't want to sound like an antiquated dinosaur, far from it, but people talk to me about now people's skills not needed anymore. You know, you don't need to do that. You can work from here. You haven't got to travel to there. There's nothing better than someone taking the time out to come and sell themselves. I get emails. I want to be the next Pep Guardiola. I'm a level 1 coach working at, you know, Reggie Arse Rovers, and I think I should be working at pro level. What advice would you give me? And it's nonsensical. And you must get, as I kid you not, 20 a week of such approaches and requests and inquiries. And it's when you hear the sensible one, you hear the people who you have to work. Hard work underpins everything. And anyone that thinks you can go from A to B purely by chance, no. Sean Dyche was my youth team coach at Watford. We're good friends, and obviously he's done another fantastic job at Premier League level. But we had to pump the balls up, you know, drive the minivan, do everything, do long hours. I'd get to Watford training ground at 7 in the morning. I'd get home at 10 at night when this was I was working at Watford, and Sean would drive back to Northampton, be back in the morning. Long hours to get yourself in a position whereby you have an opportunity to open doors. So the people skills, massive, that will never go away yet. And also that hard work has to underpin everything. And it really does irk you when you get these people saying, I deserve a chance. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're a level 1 coach. My wife's a level 1 coach. I'm not being that's the lowest.
It's the reality.
First step on the ladder. So great, good, you know, congratulations to everyone for the first step. But don't then talk like you deserve to work in the professional game. And that's the problem. They want to bypass the work and get straight to pro license level.
Can I just take you back a little bit to something that you said as well there about that hard work? And I think you might just talk into them, you know, how important it really is to, you know, have that hard work, but also make sure that you're not trying to be a version of someone else. and staying true to your own qualities and what your strengths are. And you're, in that, I'm not going to be a Mark Warburton. So why not I focus on being myself and being the best version of myself rather than trying to be an imitation of Mark Warburton? So, you talk about that email, I want to be the next Pep Guardiola. Well, it's not going to happen, is it really?
Well, what I think you have to do is the best coaches are the best thieves. The best coaches take the best ideas, the best practices, the best drills, and they tweak them and mould them into something that they can use for their philosophy, their style. And that's the key. So I'm never trying to be someone else. There was a great coach educator who unfortunately recently passed away called Dick Bate. And Dick was the best coach educator in the world, bar none. A font of knowledge. And I had the privilege of working with Dick for 2 years at Watford. But he was, England FA top tutor and the very, very best. So I want to take certain strengths from Dick. I can't copy Dick. I want to take his organisation, his passion, his delivery, his pleasure in seeing people learn and educate themselves. You want to take certain traits, and all around the game, you'll meet people, and you want to take certain traits from it. That's really, really key. But you have to understand what you are. What is yours? What do you stand for? And at the end of the day, we're all trying to get our players to be better and to become better individuals on and off the pitch and to perform on the pitch in terms of results and go as far as they can in the game. Absolutely. That's what we'll do. But how we get there is down to you using your personality, your knowledge, your people skills, your man management, all of these various traits that come together and hopefully produce the end product in terms of a quality of coach.
Definitely. And just talking about Dick Bate there, you're not the first person to mention Dick in all of our interviews. Just speaking about Dick for a second, what would you say is one of the biggest lessons that you've taken from Dick?
His passion for the game. There's not one thing you say about Dick. You have to talk about his honesty, his integrity, his levels of respect, but his passion for the game came across so striking. And as I say, every day for me was like an A license at Watford. He'd come in and he'd say to you, he'd look at me in the morning and go, "Your best Dutch team of all time, and why?" 1 o'clock. And he'd walk off, and I'd what? And I'd go and do whatever I had to do. And at 5-1, he'd give me the old finger. Go on then. And I'm trying to wing it. So I'm going, Cruyff. Yeah, he went obvious. Next, and now I'm thinking, Nayskins, why? Oh God, Rudy Kroll, why? Oh God, now I'm struggling. But it was just a case of him in the right way, improving my education. What was good about those players? What did you learn about those players? What did you like about them? What separated them from the average player to be elite, excellent players? And he would do this. What you're playing 3-5-2 on Saturday. What do you play against it? Or what happens if they're now up their wingers? And it was just an A license every single day. It was a privilege to have that access to such an individual of such quality. So there's not one thing about Dick. Is passing the game lost, a true educator and a true icon in terms of coaches benefiting from his wealth of knowledge and experience.
Just, there's a couple of things I want to touch on within that. You've talked there about that passion, but I think one key thing that stands out for me is him asking those questions, really challenging you to come up with real rationale as to why you're doing, or why your thought process is the way it is. And I don't think enough coaches, from my experience, do enough of that. They just go with it. What happens, and they don't really take much time to reflect or even look at why behind the what, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just to kind of delve deeper, then you talked about that passion. Within that, another point I've also discussed with many coaches is that passion needs to be true. It needs to be authentic. It can't be something you make up. So, if for instance, your passion is working with the foundation phase players or your passion is working with youth development phase, you might just talking to about, from your own experiences, how important it is that coaches do, maybe take that time to self-reflect and ask themselves where they may be best suited, rather than just looking at, right, we all need to work in the senior game, we all need to work in the professional development phase, because there's a lot of coaches out there probably looking for that, but maybe for the wrong reasons, quite often because maybe the financial gain is seen more beneficial at that top end of the game. Certainly, obviously, at senior level, but more specifically with the professional development phase as opposed to the foundation phase, rather.
Absolutely. So I get, people write into me and say, I want to work my way up and be better and end up at first team level. So I say, why? and they say, well, I want to be first team level. Yeah, why? And they think I'm being sarcastic. I'm not. So the one was, I got an under 11 coach, under 12 coach, right? And I said, well, why don't you be the best under 12 coach in London, then be the best under 12 coach in the southern counties, and then be recognised nationally as one of the very best under 12 coaches. And you can see that the mind was thinking, he went, well, I just want to work first team. And there's no logic to it. It's almost like, you know, you're seen, unless you're with the first team, you haven't got that kudos. I always thought, yes, I never had to play. I was only a couple of years as a pro, and I was a bang average conference player. That's what I was. So I never had the playing career of a Gerrard, Steven Gerrard, or Frank Lampard, or Wayne Rooney. None of that. So I always naturally presumed I'd work in the academy. Now, having come out of a really, you know, responsible job in a city, I take this the right way. I was never just going to be yes sir, no sir coach. I'd have to have a position where I could impact change. So I wanted to be academy director at a top 6 Premier League club. That was my ambition. But I always knew that I had to be very, very good at it. So I spent time with, I've coached all the ages, great experience working across them, because you have to have that. But I never for 1 second thought the first team would even be an option. Not for 1 second. But all the work done with the youth levels, and, you know, I'm doing the reserves under the youth team during the day with Eddie Boothroyd and Dick, etc., and Sean Dyche and Malcolm Mackay and Brendan. And then in the evening, I'm coaching the 9s and then the 14s and the 15s and 16s. So you have a really broad depth of education. Again, never thinking I'll be with the first team. So it does amaze me when people only ever seem to be, they think their street cred, their kudos will only come if they're first team. And there's, you know, some really talented coaches who could specialise in those key areas of 11 to 16, 11 to 18, and be the very best in the country if they want to be.
I think just on that, you know, you talk there about Dick Bate being as, you know, excellent coach and all the accolades, you know, and all the, I guess, the endorsements that he's had amongst many people. But there's, you know, equally you've got someone like Pete Sturgis, for instance, who's you know, a specialist in the foundation phase and an excellent one at that. You know, but just, you know, you talk there about your career not being a, you know, I guess a major ex-pro, and you're asking yourself, you know, never really having it in your mind as to when that first team, you know, that first team in Bright might not even be a thing for you. When did that start to change? When did you feel like that actually this is an avenue that is starting to open up?
It only changed really. But bear in mind, I've gone around Europe, look at the academies. You know, a lot of time spent at Barcelona, at La Masia, at Ajax, at Sporting, as I mentioned, at Borussia, at PSG, at Anderlecht, all these various clubs, and obviously the likes of John McDermott at Tottenham. John's outstanding now, gone with the FA. But Neil Bath at Chelsea, and all these various clubs. Frank McParland outstanding at Liverpool. All of these people. So I'm always thinking I want to be the very, very best academy director. And it wasn't until I got a phone call. I left Watford. I'd fallen out with an individual at Watford who I learned from his power grab, shall we say. And I got a phone call from Matthew Benham, the owner of Brentford. And I've met Matthew through a friend. And at the time, he couldn't buy Brentford. And Watford were in dire straits financially. And I inquired as whether Matthew would be interested in buying Watford. Got on really well with him, and he watched me work and vice versa. Got a phone call at 1 a.m. He'd just removed Andy Scott. And he said, would you come and coach the first team for me? And that was it. So yes, out of the blue, I get a phone call at 1 a.m. I kid you not, I'm on my PC going through the Brentford squad who are in League One. They were 18th in League One. And I'm learning the names of Gary and Charlie McDonald and Gazzardo and Leon Legg. And
was that on Google or was that on Football Manager that you was
whatever it was, wherever I looked at 2 a.m. with a lot of coffee, I'm trying to find out the various. I wanted to make sure that when I turned up, I always thought to myself, go back to the kids in Charlotte, North Carolina, and coaching them. I always thought, make sure they enjoy it. Make sure whoever you work with, whether it's England internationals or whether you're working with under 9 boys or girls, make sure they enjoy the session. So I knew that I had to speak to them like men. I had to get their attention quickly and early. Nicky Forster was the player that was there, but never taken a session in his life. Nicky, great guy, but I was a coach. He was still a player, top player. But I was taking a session, so I knew what I had to do. So I had that confidence from working with the reserves and youth teams and all the various age groups and the city background of dealing with people. As long as you treat them respectfully, I'm all about my big thing is environment you create. There is one of respect. How you talk to people is huge. Society is changing, so that's my big bugbear, so to speak. So I went there. I knew their names. I set a session up. Spoke to them well, told them what they could expect from us, and it went really well. And I just found I wasn't phased in terms of worried about it. I just presented a session that I knew they'd enjoy, that was sharp, clearly organised, knew what we were trying to get out of it, made sure the boys enjoyed it. They came off the pitch buzzing. I was happy, they were happy, and we were in a good place.
Yeah, and just on that, Mark, you've already touching it a bit earlier in terms of like not necessarily having that like high professional level experience, but conference is still a decent level. I think you need to give yourself some merit for that. But how did you go about like bridging that gap? So when you started coaching, I know you had an idea that you weren't going to be the yes sir, no sir sort of coach there, and you wanted to do the academy director sort of role. But were you thinking that really like when you just started, or at that point, is it just because of your enjoyment of the game that you still wanted to just be involved in the coaching aspect there?
No, I was very aware, Ben. I knew that, as I say, I can't back on that playing career, but when you walk into the room, someone like Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, these are world-class international players.
Yeah.
So they immediately have the audience here because of their playing career. Now, of course, over time, you have to show them your coaching, your management. But I never had that. What I did have, though, you always look at a selling point. You say, where am I strong? Where am I weak? So I was weak in terms of my playing career. Now, when later on down the line, I meet Davy Weir, obviously a top player. Yeah. Someone who we met. We set up a European tournament called Next Gen Series.
Oh, yeah.
We had 24 of the biggest clubs in Europe in this tournament, under 19, that UEFA kindly killed on the third year. But we had that, and David Moyes wanted Everton in the tournament, and David Weir would have taken the team. So I met David, and great guy, but I knew David. We worked together for a long time now, and top man. But that's my weakness of a playing career filled, because David Weir's had an outstanding playing career. So that was the weakness field. Where's my strength? And I'm looking at it going, well, what do I do well? What do I as a person do well? And I've got a background on the financial side. Players love holidays, cars, money. They're the same as any competitive young guy or woman. They want the things we all want. But I had the financial background, and they loved when you hear them talk about the amounts, we would turn over billions of dollars every day, not millions, but billions of dollars every day. When they heard that, suddenly they go, whoa. So you had a selling point. You had a hook to say, this is what I did. I can't play football like you, but we bought and sold, $3 billion last week.
Same cause.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. I don't like to say that sounds really materialistic, but I'm not walking in or coming in a bike on the back. It's one of those. So that was my selling point, and that's what really works. That really works. So you can go in there, and when they ask, what did you do? They're always going to say, what do you do then? This is what I did. This is what I did. I was in charge of these guys doing this, earning that, not in terms of your salary, but for the company. That's what we did. Whoa. Now you've got their attention. So again, you're showing that you're organised, you're showing that you're competitive, you're showing that you have good knowledge, and you're making sure that the environment is one that they can enjoy coming to work in and they can develop in. Our job has to be, Ben, to put a framework in place that makes them better. On and off the pitch, makes them better. If you put that framework in place, an environment that is conducive to learning and development, then you're in a really good place.
I'm kind of happy that you've said that on being a first team manager, because a lot of coaches have this sort of dichotomy where they look at development and the competition different. But I feel like, in my opinion, whatever level it is, they're learning something. It may be that they're learning the way you want them to play. It may be that they're learning how to develop themselves to fit into the sort of tactics or strategies that you want them to do or improve themselves just in general. But it's learning that's still part of it. As you're going on, you were saying a few names there and whatnot, and you were linking them to the opportunities that you got. Can you just touch a bit there about the importance of the networking, like how important it is to network within football? And I can imagine that in your experience in banking, that was a really integral part of it as well.
It was, yeah, it really was. I hark back to that Tokyo thing, and literally, I took the time to go over those, and it purely by chance as well, Ben. So one of my colleagues, senior guy who was meant to go, fell ill, and I went the following day, 1987, to Tokyo for 10 days. And as I said, I'm armed with sleeves of golf balls and bottles of whiskey. And it sounds a bit bizarre, but you had to go to the interpreter. So you would speak on like a Reuters machine, like this machine, and you're speaking to what you think is your colleague at this bank. You're not. You're speaking to the young kid out of the American university, because the trader never spoke English. So now you're at dinner and you give them some golf balls and you're speaking through an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, interpreter, to go back really hard and really challenging, really, really challenging. But you've got to find a relationship, because that man or that woman holds the key to you getting business. So that was the same thing. So you had to network. It's how you sell yourself, and you can't come across as arrogant and brash. And some of the mails I get, Yas just asked me, I consider myself to be a future England coach. And what? Where does that come from? Why would you open up a letter or a LinkedIn message starting with that? But it's so how you sell yourself, the impression that you create, what memories do you leave with that person? Does he go, oh, Ben's a good guy, or does he go, God, Ben was a pain in the back? How does he do it? And that's, or she do it rather. And that's so important. So selling yourself, networking, you've got to be consistent. You've got to maintain integrity. You've got to recognize sometimes you're banging your head against a brick wall. As I say, the 50 calls, I'm calling and calling. I tried to get to Barcelona, stupidly in advance. So I think about it now, what an idiot to try and, why would I take my call? I must have 50 a day. But I got in via Diogo Matos of Sport in Lisbon. Then they welcomed me with open arms. Couldn't have been more polite and courteous. But you have to find a way in. And sometimes, going in through the back door as opposed to trying to bang down the front door is the best way of doing it. So the very, very important point that you make, to network well, to understand it's got to be two-way. Right? If I'm coming to you, I've got to make sure I give you something back.
Exactly that, yeah.
And it's, I don't mean money partially. I mean it can be, talking about something, a drill, it can be a contact, it can be anything, but people are very, very busy in all walks of life, and you've got to make sure that the relationship is two-way and beneficial for all. And as I say, you just remain honest and maintain integrity throughout and respect. I think you'd be in a good place.
Definitely. I just want to take you back to a little bit. You said there, you got that 1 a.m. call, come in to Brentford, do it first. You're searching your football manager, you Google to find out who the players are.
Wiping the eyes at the same time.
And all the coffee and whatnot. Your role initially at Brentford was a sporting director, wasn't it?
No, it was. It was. It's first to win in 18th in League One. I think we finished 10th in League One that season. So I was really pleased that 6-month period from January through to the end of the season. The boys responded really well, and I wanted the job then. Yes, I wanted the first team manager's job. And Matthew, who's so sharp, so intelligent, he wanted me to become sporting director and made Uwe Rosler, the German international Man City player, as manager. And I was angry. I was miffed, but. It was a great opportunity. You put me in charge of the first team, in charge of the academy, in charge of all the staff. I was in charge of analysis, sports science, medical, everything. So really enjoyed that side of it. And it was a great 2 years to be able to work on the environment. The number of the staff that we hired are still there now, with Brentford doing so well. So delighted with that, very proud of that fact. And I enjoyed that. I learned how to deal with agents. Again, the agents one, just be honest with them. I was never into all this. I came from the city world where there's my price, etc. I don't do all this, here's £2,000 a week, no £6,000 a week, no 2.5, no 5.5, no, all that nonsense. We would say, this is what we do. There's our commission that we pay. And in that 2 years, we got a lot of young players in, and likes of Adam Forshaw and Bidwell. And, you look at James Tarkowski who came in, and Yotta and Adebayo and Pritchard. All these guys have gone on Premier League careers over the coming 18 months, 2 years, with Frank coming in and David, Frank McParn, David Weir. We had a really good setup there. But that sporting director 2-year period really allowed me to broaden my education further. And again, you can start to develop your own reputation within the game in terms of how you conduct yourself, how you go about your business, and how the players were responding to that.
And then just obviously starting off as sporting director, how did you eventually get to that first team manager's role then?
It got to November, 20 months down the line, and Uwe was approached by Wigan, who had then just come out of the Premier League, were a bigger club than Brentford, obviously, at the time. And he wanted to go to Wigan. His family are based in Manchester. It was a great move for him, and fully understood it. And that was on the Thursday. And I think we had a game on the Saturday, which I had one of the goalkeeping coach take, and I was there in the stand watching it and helping, etc. And then on the Sunday, I was going to an Arsenal game. I'm a Spurs fan, but I was going to watch an Arsenal game, and I was ironing a shirt to go to the Arsenal game to be in the box, and got a phone call from Matthew to offer me the job of first team manager, and that was it. So obviously very, very thankful. We'll always be thankful to Matthew for that trust he showed in me and the opportunity he afforded me. And I immediately phoned David Weir. So David, would you like to be my assistant? And thankfully on the Monday, David came down, we had a nice bit of lunch, and he agreed to that. And that was it. Yes, we're now starting. I'm sitting here thinking, well, here's me thinking I'd never get near first team. I'm now in charge of a League One club. I forget where we were, top 10 in League One. Somewhere we're doing well. And we're in a good position. And thankfully, we finished off that year by then getting promoted with Wolves. We had a great run. I think unbeaten in 20-odd games and had a really good run. And then the following year, of course, we got to the playoffs, the Premier League as well. So we had a really, really fruitful couple of years.
You just talked there about, having a very successful first season. What would you say were some of the key ingredients to the success in that period?
I knew the players. I'd signed most of the players. And they knew me in terms. I would never just go back to the sporting director role. People say to me about what the key traits for a sporting director. Two things, yes. One, you have to get on with the manager, always. So you have to work so closely together, and you've got to be honest, respectful, and maintain integrity. So I would never, for example, put a tracksuit on and go onto the pitch. Now, every bone in my body is aching to get on the pitch and work with the players, but that was Uwe's domain. That was his environment. And as sporting director, it wasn't right. I'd obviously watch training if I wasn't travelling to look at players. I'd watch training. I'd always give him my opinion. We'd have coffee every day. We'd have dinner twice a week. 10 phone calls, 20 phone calls a day, whatever it may be. But I would not cross that line, so to speak, to get into the sporting director. But I knew the players. So when I got the manager's job, the players knew who I was, what I stood for. The staff all knew me because I'd hired most of them. And it was easy for me then to move on, and I could really lay down the laws of the environment, the type of environment I wanted, how we spoke to people. I'd always rather have leaner than fatter. I hate excess bodies around. I'd rather challenge people to work harder, produce more, and incentivize them. And it worked well. It worked well, yes. People were very happy. The right people were happy to buy into that. We worked long hours. We were a lean team. But the players were responding really well. The recruitment with Frank and the Parliament was outstanding. As I say, people like James Tarkowski now at Burnley, Andre Gray now at Watford, Jota now at Aston Villa, Pritchard obviously moved for 12 million quid to Huddersfield in the Premier League. All of these various players, Odebayu, Button at Brighton, Harley Dean at Birmingham, Jake Bibble at Swansea, all of these guys have gone on to have excellent careers. So we were really happy with the recruitment, but we had a good team. We had a really good team. The owner, Matthew, was superb in his backing of us, and we surprised a lot of people.
Well, talk there a bit about, about not just the players, but obviously yourself, going on to have some successful careers beyond that time at Brentford. You've had 2 years at Brentford, or a season and a half almost, just over a season and a half, and you've now ended up eventually at Rangers. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
At QPR, you mean? The old
actually, before we even get to that, there's quite an interesting story around the Brentford thing, isn't it? You had this whole thing about the bonuses, didn't you, to help keep the players motivated?
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, the owner's obviously got a big financial background, and I came from a city culture. I mean, listen, you could be left wing, right wing, whatever your political, thoughts or ideals are. Bonuses in the city are only paid to people who earn the money. So if you have a trader who makes you $10 million profit and he gets paid 10% bonus, you're still $9 million better off. I read some scandalous headlines. So you're paid these bonuses. So that culture of rewarding success to me was natural. I'd had 20 odd years of that. And Matthew the same. And we just put a really aggressive one in. Why should, we were coming back from Hartlepool in that first 6 months with a shocking result. They lost 2-0, played poorly. And I heard one player say, at least I get my appearance money. And I'm thinking, why do you get appearance money? Why should you get paid for appearing when you get paid for that in your basic salary anyway? And you've lost. So things like, when you have players who might be on, I don't know, £1,000 appearance, say, no, nothing for a draw, nothing for a loss, but $3,000 for a win. That type of, incentivize them, set piece, get awarded for scoring a set piece, get get deducted the same amount for conceding a set piece. All of these various traits, number of points, number of goal difference. So if you look at the Championship, over 65 points gets you, up top 8 and pushing on. So every point above 64 will be X amount in your bonus pool. All of these type of incentives just drives the boys on. And you had a Brentford team who were favourites for relegation, third smallest budget, really aggressive bonus scheme, and the boys just went for it, properly went for it. And I love that focus and desire. The likes of Jonathan Douglas, who an outstanding leader, driver, could be surly at times, Dougie, but a top player, and he just really drove the boys forward.
That's quite an interesting scheme that you had there. And even when you hear of like interviews from the players of their time, they do talk about that incentive thing and actually thinking of it whilst they're on the pitch there. What other sort of methods do you use to motivate players? I know that you don't have to do that much per se at that level, but it's like those minor differences that make a huge difference on the pitch at that sort of level there. So is there anything particularly on the day-to-day in training that you may employ in the environment or in the training sessions that do so?
I mean, the obvious thing to say, Ben, is to improve, where they go to work every day. So the hard side of it in terms of how good's the food in the canteen, the quality of the training pitches, the quality of the gym and the gym equipment, the quality of the medical room, the staff, the analysis, all of the data all of this type of support network is obviously massively important. But the most important thing is developing a relationship with the players and making sure they trust you. Giving them every reason to trust you. So how you go back to the environment, how you speak to people. You're going to drop someone. You don't say, "Oh, you're not playing Sunday, son." That's not good enough. Call them in. You're not going to be in my team on Saturday. This is the reason why. This is what I need to see from you. This is why I'm picking him, and this is what I'm looking for, and this is how we're going to get you to where we need you to be. So they may not like the news, but at least you've done it respectfully. You've told them. You've maintained honesty and integrity. And again, timekeeping. We had I won't say how it'd be too obvious, but I was at a big club, and first 4 games, the meeting and analysis will be at 1:15 in the afternoon. And our analysis every day, pre-COVID, is 10, 12 minutes of, what we did at the weekend, what we did well, could do better, our forthcoming opponents, in possession, out of possession, how we're going to hurt them, all this sort of structured work. And we had one guy, and I put a clock up, and I put a sign up saying, "Early is on time is late." So he thought it was great, this player, big player, to get in at 1:14 and 50 seconds and stroll in, smiling, saying, "All right, Gaffer," as if to say he was being really cool. And he couldn't work out. It took him 4 games to work out that he wasn't playing, why he wasn't playing. But it's that type of thing. You haven't got to embarrass them. You haven't got to shame them. But when they knock on your door, you say, "Well, if you think it's cool to get in at 1:14 and 55 seconds for a 1:15 meeting, no problem. I think it's cool not to pick you." All right. And then lo and behold, he's there at 1:10 the next meeting, sitting there first in the front row. But you get your point across. And again, it's how you tell people, because society is changing. So we were at Glasgow Rangers, and a great group of people, people like Lee Wallace and Kenny Miller, Nico Cranjo, some really good people, and the young ones that came up there. And we wanted certain things. How can we get it better? We got a whiteboard up. What are the small details that would make things better? One guy put up a hairdryer in the home dressing room. Others talked about more food, or more this, or the hydrotherapy pool, or whatever it may be. But it's all anonymous. So I put up there collar and tie for away games, because you wear them at home at Ibrox in front of 50,000. You wear your collar and tie, but away you invariably go tracksuit. But Rangers have in Scotland, they're the 2 biggest clubs, Rangers and Celtic. So they have this image that I wanted to really enhance. And so I wrote up there anonymously, wear collar and tie. So I said to the players, "What do you think about the board?" "Yeah, great ideas." "All good?" "Yeah, all good." Done. If I'd have said to them, "You're wearing collar and tie away," "Oh, Gaffer, come on." But by put it up on the board and them saying, "No, it's all good," it was done. So I think the most important thing, Ben, is to make sure you're honest with them, and the environment you create is geared towards making them better. When they drive to work in the morning, they've got to enjoy it. If you're a bricklayer or a cab driver or work in a bank or whatever, or a doctor, whatever job you do, if you enjoy going to work, your end product will be of a higher quality. And that's got to be our job as football coaches and managers, to make sure that environment is as good and as productive as we can make it.
Definitely. And you've already started to touch there on Rangers. It's a massive club, and I think I'm even understating it by saying that. And the point of when you came in was obviously after the administration happened and they consequently got relegated. You got the league and cup double in your first season there, and I feel like on paper people will underestimate that, thinking that, oh, Rangers are meant to go up, but I can imagine the expectations that were around you was heavy. And how did you deal with that pressure to kind of still conduct yourself in the same way that you would usually do in any managerial role that you do?
It was a really steep learning curve. And I'm lucky to have David Weir. Don't forget, David Weir captained them in the UEFA Cup final, age 41, I think it was. But I was very lucky. My CV was strong from Brentford, so I had some really nice offers. Very, very fortunate. But when that size of club comes calling, you are privileged, really privileged. But the board made it very clear. Promotion was non-negotiable first year. But we only had 9 players in the first day. Literally had 9 players. They'd let 13 go. I think 11 or 13 go. And we had 9 players. So we had to recruit really quickly with no money, minimal money. And still, all the eyes are on them. I mean, it's an unbelievable, if you haven't been there, it's an unbelievable theatre of football. 50,000 roaring eyeballs is a quite incredible, it really is. And it's a fantastic, as I say, privilege to be there. But you've got to deal with this expectation. And David Weir always said to me, if you're 0-0 at half-time at Ibrox, they'll boo at 0-0. Absolutely boo you off the pitch. But then they'll cheer you coming out after half-time again. And that's just the nature of Rangers. So you've got to get used to that. Wherever you go, it's a bubble that you cannot believe. You guys love football. But you're talking about, a player can't go and buy a loaf of bread. A player can't go. Anywhere you go, you are bang. The passion for football is so high. But the fans are magnificent and the theatre is magnificent, but you've got to deal with the media. There's the steepest learning curve. 20 pages every day on Rangers and Celtic. Radio shows every night. If they haven't got anything to talk about, they'll make it up. So you've got to deal, what you say, every word you say can be taken, used out of context, and it's a magnificent learning curve. Because when you come back down south, after dealing with Glasgow Rangers, you can deal with anything.
Walk in the park, I can imagine.
I went to Nottingham Forrest, who are twice European champions, and the media guy said, it's going to be about 15 minutes. Is that okay? Media in Scotland was like, minimum 2.5 hours and loads more on top. You had BBC Scotland, you had 5 Live, you had Sky Sports, you had the Sundays, the dailies, you had the club channel. It was incredible. But again, it's a privilege because you're manager of Rangers. It's a globally recognised club. And anyone who said no, you'd walk away from it, which is nonsense, and B would say it wasn't a privilege, is talking absolute nonsense, because it really is. We work as coaches and managers to be privileged enough to take those positions.
Definitely. You just touched on there, Mark, about it being a massive difference just from dealing with the media perspective in general. But that wasn't the only difference you had when you went to Nottingham Forest. A bit more of a unsuccessful time, shall we say, as opposed to it was at Rangers and your period at Brentford. Why do you think that was? What would you think?
This is where you get angry as a coach, Yas, because you go in there and then the bottom 3, Nottingham Forest, and the mandate was to keep them up. And in the last game, we had to better Blackburn's score, and we had 6 or 7 academy kids in the team, went young, achieved it, and stayed up. So straight away in the first season, you've kept them in the division. Then the mandate for the second year, or the first full season, was threefold. It was consolidate mid-table. It was reduce the size of the squad, which was 35, 36 when we went in there, and reduce the average age, which was 29 and a half. There's a lot of senior players, Ross McCormack, Jacobs, Matt Mills, etc. So at Christmas of that first full season, when we were sacked on December 31st, we're 12th in the table. The size of the squad is 23, and the average age in the last 2 games have been 22 years and 10 months. So you go, KPI, you hit every single KPI, and you're in great position, and you get sacked. And I'm not having to go at you here, by the way. You're saying to me, why didn't it work out? You tell me. Because you get sacked, and it reads in your CV, manager sacked. You go, well, I've hit my KPIs. And I came from a background in the city where there's your KPIs, there's your target. If you hit them, you're in good shape. We were exactly on every single KPI. Go back to Glasgow Rangers. The mandate was European football third year, non-negotiable. We're second in the table because you're 20 points behind Celtic, sacked. But we're second.
Still on track.
We're bang on target. But then you realise that the football stirs emotion and passion, and logical thinking and business thinking goes out the window. So because we had lost 2 home games, we were 12th in the table, Forrest, with a really, really young team.
Just on that, you know, you talk. I think you're spot on. Absolutely agree. You know, if you're hitting those KPIs, these are the KPIs that have been set. I've hit them. So what's the issue, sort of thing?
Yeah.
How does that then get justified? You know, if it doesn't work out, what is the reason, or I guess the rationale, or better yet, what is the excuse for the way to end things in that manner?
No, it's nothing. You get. I mean, any manager will tell you, a coach will tell you, you get called in on New Year's Eve, and the chairman says some bad news. They want to change the direction. What does that mean? You want to change it. So listen, that's the nature of the business. So you have to get used to it. You have to get thick skin. You have to get used to it. But it still hurts because you're a professional and you're human. And it still you look at your CV and goes, sacked from Glasgow Rangers. Why? Sacked. And those type of things really hurt you. If you're 19th in the table and you're really struggling, and you're 20th in the table and you've lost, you spent loads of money, and I understand. Then you got to go. That's the nature. But I think we're in a pastime. We're in a business here where emotions run so high. And as I said, we have a lot of foreign owners, which is obviously very good for the game in terms of investment and variety, but also their mindset changes very, very quickly. You know, when I look at some clubs, some of the Spanish clubs I read yesterday one Spanish club has had 6 sporting directors and 6 managers in 6 years. How can you expect to have continuity and develop a philosophy and ethos and build a platform and the fans can engage with when it's going to change? So for me, you have to recognise it's a very, very emotional business. You win a game of football, these things here. People who watch social media, it's a nightmare. Yes, why people bother to do it? You get some absolute idiots. Sack him. New contract. Offer him a new contract. We won a game. Sack him. I've worked with really clever people. CEOs now of different clubs, and I talk to them, and their own clubs are different. It might be Arsenal, or Tottenham, or Liverpool. And I hear them say, Wenger must go. Wenger must go. Why? We've lost 3 in a row. Then they beat Liverpool. He must sign a new contract. This is someone's career. This is someone's life. This is a business making long-term decisions, and yet you're changing with the wind. And it's, as I say, for me, that's football. We have to get used to it. I'm not saying it's right. It won't change anytime soon, yes. And as I say, you just have to have a thick skin and work hard and hope that your efforts are recognised and rewarded.
Definitely. Just touching on that. So you've now, your time at Nottingham Forrest has come to an end. You had a brief bit of time out of the game before you eventually ended up at QPR. Just out of curiosity, what does a football manager do in that time frame? Is it that just gathering the thoughts, or?
No. When I left Glasgow Rangers, I got on with Brendan. Brendan was at Celtic and said some nice things and said to me, take some time out, take 6 months out. But I'd never not worked in my life. And I was being at home for 2 weeks, and then a call came in from Forrest. It's hard to tell a club of that stature. So that happened. When I left Forrest, I had longer out than I anticipated. I thought, right, take 6 months out. The CV was still strong from Scotland, strong from Brentford. Forrest, people would see what we were doing. So you anticipate you get back in. So I reviewed time. I was angry, really angry at what happened, but you can chill out. You can spend a bit of time with family, play a bit of golf, go and visit good friends in the game. Now you want to start learning, keep learning. And then I'm intrigued by the MLS. So I spent time in Boston Revolution with Brad Friedel when he was coach there. I spent time in New York City. I spent time in Seattle, flew over to Seattle and spent time with Damien Roden, top guy, who was at the Sounders, who won the title that year, and San Jose. So basically, just improved my knowledge of the MLS. Really improved it. And I was very close to getting 2 jobs in the MLS. But I didn't get them. What I liked was the fact they wanted to keep it domestic. They wanted to keep it domestic, which I admire their desire to work within the game and promote their own young coaches. So now I'm frustrated. Now it's sort of 15 months. I'm thinking, wow, you know, I was very close to getting a very big job within the game, technical director level, and felt very angry at that as well. And then suddenly QPR called up and said, come and see Les. Speak to Les, Lee Hughes, the owners, and you get a good feeling for interview. Yes, you get a good, you know, they ask good questions, you ask good questions and get good answers, and it just feels right. And I digress slightly here, but what I do fear for young managers and coaches is if they haven't worked for a while and need to work to pay mortgages and, you know, school or what, family, and put food on the table, all the normal things, then they don't ask the questions at interviews that you have to ask. What do I have budget available? What are my lines of communication? What staff can I bring in? What staff can I remove? All of these basic questions that you have to ask, they don't ask them because they feel that if they do ask them, they run the risk of losing the job. And all that creates a cycle of failure, because you boom to failure when they can sack you after 6, 8, 10 games.
Yeah. So, you know, you've obviously had that interview at QPR. You said it went quite well. Began your role there, and you know, in your first full season now, it's been almost cut short, hasn't it? Really, to an extent, there's been a massive break in that. Obviously, with this pandemic, you know, how has that changed things for you over the course of the last, you know, few weeks and months now?
It does a lot of things, yes, but if I can answer the question in a bigger way first, is when a football supporter looks at a result. So right now, look at Hull play Middlesbrough right now. I watch it after this chat, and we play Middlesbrough on Sunday. Now, whatever the result, the football supporters go, oh, Hull got battered, or Middlesbrough got battered, or whatever it is. You look at the result, you know, Birmingham got smashed last night. No one understands what Pep Clotet at Birmingham is having to deal with. I don't, in terms of I don't understand. I probably have more than the average football supporter, but has he lost players to contract? Has he lost players who are not playing? Are they injured? How have they responded in terms of after the COVID? All this stuff is so difficult. Supporters just look at a result and make comments. And as I say, what you look at with QPR, and you look at the size of squads, you look at the budget available, look at the disparity of budget, all of these things. You look at Grant McCann at Hull, who lost a number of players. You know, then he had injuries and whatever else. He's dealing with so much. So people go, oh, they're having a tough time. Why? I hear, you know, they've got to change their manager. Why? Grant's doing a great job under really difficult circumstances, but people don't look deeply enough. They just look at the periphery of it, and they don't really understand what goes on behind the scenes. So for us at QPR, we were in good shape. You know, we were pre-COVID, 6 unbeaten, got to Preston, had a good away win, 3-1, and then bang, this happens. And, you know, you have to deal with it then. And all the other clubs have similar issues, but there's no doubt when we use words like unprecedented, they are, yes. They are unprecedented times, so difficult for so many reasons. Players being offered deals and contracts not being accepted, and illness and you know, trying to get players fit in a shorter period of time, ensuing injuries, and all of these various issues impact squads. And as I say, it's too easy for football supporters to go, oh, look at that, look, what's happened to them? They got beat last night. Why? You know, if you really do care about the game and you're in the coaches network, or you're talking about, and you care about coaching, what is that manager dealing with? What does the coach deal with? What does his squad look like? What's his budget compare? All of these questions would improve your knowledge education of what you face when you actually get a role of this nature.
Yeah, for me, I agree with you. I feel like people are a bit too surface sometimes when they look at things, and it's a shame that, like, I wish it could be done the same way they kind of do, like the young ages where they have no league tables, because once they look at a league table, that's when they judge a team directly. And unfortunately, every team is in like different circumstances and have different budgets to work with. Like you said, personally, I feel with the budget that you do have at QPR, and like when you look at the average age that you have in terms of your average starting 11, is impressive what you guys are doing, and it's only going to lead to a sustainable model for them. In regards to that, with coaches and the way they look at the game, what sort of aspects do you look for within your team? Like, is it based on the sort of players that you have at your disposal, or at your different clubs, or do you have like a particular way that you would like to play, regardless of what club you're at?
I like Ben. I like players who can dominate a football. I like players who look to take the football. Aren't afraid of a mistake. We only ever learn by our mistakes. So you can't say to a player, play out from the back, for example, or take it in a tight area, but don't make a mistake. That doesn't work. They're human beings. They're going to make mistakes. So how you respond, go back to that environment and how you speak to people. So all of these things, I look for players who enjoy having a football, players who are hungry to learn, players who are better than they realise. So, for example, we took a player, Tony Craig, from Millwall to Brentford. Tony was a top Millwall player in terms of his hard as nails defensively, left back, left centre half. But people said to me, he's old school Tony, he heads it and kicks it. That's exactly how they described it. But Tony could play, but he'd just never been previously challenged to play in a certain team. Not being rude to that team, but that team didn't want to play that way. Tony could come in and was a really talented player. But you just got to let players have the opportunity to show what they can do. Now, if a manager says, Ben, I want you to edit and kick it into the channel, do that or you won't get picked. You're going to do it. You're going to get it and smash it in the channel. If another manager comes in and says, well, left or right. But it's one of those where whatever the manager wants, you've got to respond to it. That's your job. Going back to what Yaz said previously, when a player leaves an academy, he's got to be armed with the attributes to deal with whatever manager comes in. One might play an aggressive 4-4-2. One might play a 4-4-2 diamond. One might play 4-3-3 with a 2 and a 1. Who knows what they're going to play? But as I say, for me, I like players who dominate a football, can embrace a football, brave in a decision making, keen to learn, young, hungry, yes, but you need your senior mentors as well. And from there, as I say, recognise what you've got, understand where you need change in the short term, change in the medium term, and change hopefully in the longer term if things are going in the right direction.
Definitely. And just in regards to just touching on that sustainable model, obviously QPR are quite big on promoting their youth into the first team. I can imagine that was quite an important decision as well when they're bringing you in, because you had that track record of actually bringing players through as well. How do you balance that factor of having like quite young players in the team, and then you have the likes of like the experience like the Jordan Hugels and whatnot on your team, Angel Rangels. How do you balance that aspect? You want to bring them through, but you still want the performance levels to be of a high level as well.
You do, and one of the biggest frustrations, Ben, is that everyone clamours for youth, and I think any youth player come to the academy will always be afforded more time by the crowd. Supporters are always more patient with the homegrown. And you hear Harry Kane is one of our own. You'll always hear fans who love to see their academy products coming through. And I totally agree. I totally embrace that idea. The key thing is they've got to be good enough. They've got to be good enough. And right now, my big fear is there's too many people saying, try him. I hear fans, try him, throw him in. It does. What do you mean, throw him in? It doesn't work that way. It's elite level football. This is not just over the park with throwing down a couple of jumpers for goalposts. This is proper football. And you're saying, what do you mean, throw him in? It could have a hugely detrimental impact on his development, on his confidence, etc. So you've got to do the right thing. So young players, some will be dipped in, taken out again. Some will accelerate quicker in their learning. Others require longer. That's the skill of the coach and the manager to know when and for how long. But the biggest problem I face, or not, I think football faces is when the clamour for youth fails to recognise that they need to be good enough. Because if not, all that happens is the coach and manager gets sacked. That's all that happens. And there's no reference to, at least he tried all the youth players. So if you go back to Forrest, that huge game that we had to better Blackburn's result, and I'm looking at it and going, we had young Jordan in goal. Ben Brereton has now got a Blackburn of 7 mil. We had the likes of Joe Wall, who's now week in, week out for Nottingham Forrest. Matty Cash, who's a top-class right back. These type of players coming through really did well for us. But they're good enough. They were good enough. And even though it was a game of that significance, never had a doubt about playing them, nor did Davey at all. But they've got to be good enough, Ben. And as I say, I think as budgets are being cut, COVID is going to cause the financial landscape to change beyond all recognition for the worse. Budget caps, salary caps, whatever will be coming in. And I think the clamour for young players and the academy products will be ever louder, but they have to be good enough. Because if not, they'll just sink, and so will the managers and coaches.
No, definitely, I agree. I feel like with the limitations now that is going to be introduced for clubs with COVID, there's going to be a lot more of a creative approach with it. And I think even contracts will change where people start picking your model a bit more of incentive-based performances and whatnot.
You're right. You're right, and that's a key point. To interrupt you, that's a key point because people, I think now, agents, young players have to recognise that the goalposts have moved, and we all hope very much that in 3, 4, 5 years it starts to come back to where it was pre-COVID. But right now, it's not, and it'll be the agents, the players, the clubs that can adapt best of all. They'll be the ones that can move forward, Ben. If not, I do fear we could lose a tranche of clubs here. Wigan's news yesterday, Paul Cook's doing a magnificent job, and that news yesterday, devastating for Wigan. Cup final not 7, 8 years ago, but devastating news for Wigan. But I do fear they're not the only ones. I fear there's others who are teetering on the brink here. And at the moment, League 2 and League 1 are mainly furloughed. But when they have to start paying their players to get fit for pre-season, and there's no supporters coming in, no revenue, how are they going to pay the bills? So we've got to be very, very careful here. And as I say, it's a very dangerous situation right now.
Definitely. You talked there about, being a dangerous situation. Obviously, the challenges the businesses face within this, this aspect. I'd just be interested to kind of take it back to yourself a little bit now and look at what would you say some of the biggest challenges you faced in your journey?
In football,
I guess so. Yeah, in football, and then if there's anything else within your life that can be transferred across, and I guess some key principles can be taken away from it, or lessons that you've learned from that. Then fine, go for it, man.
I think some of the key challenges coming into football, people don't know who you are. I felt for a long while, who's he? When you come up against people who have had established careers and they know so many people, and your background is youth, and that they don't really know who you are, and everyone's very skeptical. So you have to set the tone right. You have to say, look, you're confident but not arrogant. You have belief in your ability, but never come across as obnoxious. You're always keen to learn, always respectful. I keep using that word respect because it's so, for me, it's a foundation of everything. If you're respectful to people, you may disagree with them, but how you talk to them, how you respond to them, says everything about you as a person and what you stand for. I think the days of kick, bark and bite the players have long, long gone. Society's producing a different individual now. Whether they call them the millennials, whether you call them Generation Z, whatever you want to call them, they don't deal with criticism as well. And you've got to learn what makes them tick. How do they learn? What makes them respond positively? All of these things. So for me, that was one of the big challenges, is maintaining, being true to myself. I've kept a lot of good friends, but I think by doing that, the other challenge is making sure that you keep up to date with trends in the game, and making sure you don't immerse it. There's so much to do all the time, and I mean there is so much to do. Phone calls. You can phone a player. I phoned an ex-player today, a friend of mine, and I'm on the phone for 2 hours 20. I told my wife I'll be 5 minutes on the phone. It was nearly 2.5 hours.
How did you explain that one?
I didn't expect it, but
how did you explain it to her?
Well, badly, really badly. But go back to the previous point. I could have said, "Can't speak now, sorry," but I didn't, and I felt I helped him. I know I've helped him, and he's helped me in the past. So, in my mind, that was 2.5 hours well spent, and that'll hold me in good stead, and I hope him in good stead. So, all these type of things. There's so much going on in the game, and I've got to look at Hull Middlesbrough after this to see how Middlesbrough shape up for Sunday rather. But you've got to make sure at the same time you keep up to date with what's going on. What's the news within the game? What's the latest ideas in the game? The data, what can we access to in the currently access? How can we improve what we currently offer our players? Is our framework right? Is our staffing product? All of these things, you've got to keep looking. On top of that, as recruitment, looking at players, which takes time. There's no fast track. I'm looking at 3 or 4 players here, and I'm going, well, it takes time, hours and hours. So it's just how you allocate your time, but make sure you're up to speed with the latest potential opportunities to improve what you do.
Definitely.
You touched on it a little bit earlier. Obviously, we talked about Dick Bay, and throughout your coaching journey, obviously he was a massive influence, I think, for you early on in your journey. Is there anyone else that you'd add to that list of potential mentors that you've had in your career? And it would be interesting just to maybe think about what were some of the biggest lessons you took from them.
Not just mentors. I think it's people. Some could be younger, and and whatever else. I mean, my best boss I ever worked for was in the city, a guy called Mike Cornford. Enormous respect for his discipline, his subject knowledge, how he would treat people. Loved it. He was the very best boss. No idea about football. Couldn't even tell you what shape the ball is in football. But his principles of management and man management environment, I learned loads from and took it into what I do every day in my football career. Absolutely. People like John McDermott, who was at Tottenham for 12, 13 years and has now gone to be assistant director of the FA, top individual. Huge knowledge, passion for the game, intelligence, always seeking to learn, just new ideas. So you just keep learning, but all these relationships give something back. And I saw a guy, I played a game of golf a couple of weeks ago, and I met a guy and hadn't seen since 2001. But I remember one interview technique that he used, and I told the guys about. Now here he is, I haven't seen him for 19 years, and I hear a shout of, "Warbo!" boom across the golf course, and it's him. But I learned how to do certain things in interviews from him. So all these, you take snippets, and I write things down. I like writing things down. I've got journals all around me here, just little sayings. You read the Eddie Jones book, and things will be snippets in the Eddie Jones book. And I've been fortunate enough to meet Eddie a few times and chat to him and Steve Borthwick. Very smart guys, very clever guys. And all these people that I find it privileged to meet them, because I hope very much that they say the same about yourself. But you can learn from them, yes. And sometimes it supports what you do. Sometimes you meet people who reinforce that actually, that's bad practice. I know it's bad practice, and they're showing me that it is. So it's all these things. There's never a bad meeting in my mind, but the mentors can be many. And as long as you're always seeking to learn, I think you'll be okay.
It's important to really highlight that mentors can come in all shapes and sizes, and they don't necessarily have to be older people or even people that are in your industry in particular. So I think it's very important, that coaches and anyone listening to this or watching this does take that on board and maybe just looks to people for certain skill sets rather than where they are in the industries, if that makes sense. But interesting, I want to take you right back to where I guess your journey in the quote-unquote elite world started. Obviously, part-time coach at Watford in the academy way back. Let's not give away your age. Can't be too far away. But
it's too high for my liking.
If you had an opportunity to go back now and maybe speak to the Mark Warburton of back then, what would be one message you'd want to give him?
That's a good question. That's two things. If I could split it, because I had an academy world, yes, and I had a first team world.
Go for it.
If I went back to Mark Warburton, the academy, I would have said, do it earlier. That's what I would have said, because I had that period, and this I was touched. I was fortunate to have a good jobs in the city and a decent reputation. And I was very lucky to earn some okay money, and support my family. So I was very lucky in that respect. But I knew once in 2001, once that blue touch paper was lit, level 1, level 2, bang them out. Level 3, I'm on it for 8 months, and a guy called Ted Dale, who's FA now, but was Chelsea's director. He's what mentored me through. So I should have done it earlier, because I would have really could have gone for that. If I look at the first team, I would say careful what you care about. So I talked to you a lot today about respect and environment, and I listen too much to people. So I'll try and give an example. I won't say what club, it gives too much away, but at one club, we had to sell a striker. We had to sell someone to balance FFP. And I was told we had to sell this, a lot of money, and several £1 million, and we needed that money to make sure the club was in the right position. So, okay, fine. And there would be a small amount left to buy a couple of players. So I said, fine. Now, you've told me that as my CEO boss, and I've listened to it, and I've done that. And then when I was sold, I get the guy puts his head around the door and say, "Oh, can I come in?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can. Why? You're the boss." He says, "Yeah, but I thought you might be raging because we sold the player." I said, "Well, you told me at the interview that we had to." And then I suddenly realised Glasgow Rangers are the same. Sometimes the ruthlessness is just saying, I won't swear, but sod all of them. Look after yourself. But you're trying to be respectful. You're trying to work what you think is, the city works around information flow. And if in the city you're told, there's your trading limit, that's my trading limit. I don't break it. But they're saying almost in football, you should smash through that limit and hopefully it goes well. Well, no, you can't. You can't, but that's my old world. So my advice to me would be at the start of my managerial career, sometimes you just got to, a lot of them, get on with it and do what you think is best. And I was maybe too respectful to certain people that that appeared naive. And I'm not naive, but it came across that way.
Mm.
And in regards to now, you're obviously currently QPR's first team manager. You're doing really well, bringing the youth through, and it's been a solid season, and with some decent form pre-COVID coming up. What is next for Mark Warburton?
Good question, Ben. For me, I just want to I want to be the best I can be. And that sounds a really corny and basic old line, but for me, you don't know in football. You know, I told you about you don't expect to be set, but you do in certain situations. So for me, I'd love to manage in the Premier League, absolutely. But I want to be in a position, Ben, where I feel challenged. I'm 57 years old, and I feel that, you know, by the time I get to 62, 63, I'd like to say, right, I've done okay for myself, and I'd like to be playing golf and playing with my mates and doing that, what we all do in our retirement. But I've got another 5 years or so where I can contribute, and I know I can go to better level, higher levels. Hopefully with QPR, I hope very much they stick with me and I stick with them, and we go on to what we go on to. But I want to go into somewhere where I'm challenged and I can contribute. And I feel that's the thing. When you're not working, what killed me most of all was not being in a position to contribute.
Mm.
I personally, rightly or wrongly, felt not useless, but I felt you go from 1 minute being in charge of all these people, you know, media every day and all the rest of it, Sky and everything that comes to being a manager, and then there's nothing.
Mm.
And then you think, well, I'm the same person I was yesterday, but you find yourself, you can go weeks on end. And the LMA are magnificent in that respect, in helping the staff, because I can see why, touch wood, I'm very lucky not to suffer from it, but I can see why people have issues, you know, depression type issue, because you go from being so busy every day, the phone never stops. I've got something like 17 missed calls I'm talking to you here, and you go, I'm so busy, and then when you lose your job or you're not working, you can sit here and the phone doesn't ring.
Mm.
And that's when you find out who your friends are, of course, but you also, as I say, I can see why you have a massive void that needs filling. So I hope for me in the next 5 years, in answer to your question, Ben, I hope I'm in somewhere where I am challenged, that I can contribute and make a positive contribution to moving that club or that organisation forward.
No, you did. No, it's a very honest answer there, and I appreciate that. And just touching on the depression aspect of it, I can imagine it was really tough for not only you, but like your players as well. And just in general for people during this lockdown, was there anything that you particularly faced in terms of your staff or players in that regard, they're managing them in this lockdown period?
This is a big subject, this one, Ben, which is very much in vogue at the moment.
Sorry, we'll cover it on part two.
Well, hopefully this comes across right. But I think when people have issues such as that, they deserve and need every bit of help and support we can give them. Right, so I absolutely say that anyone, my big fear right now, however, is that too often it's being used. And people, you know yourself, in life, you've got to learn coping mechanisms, how to deal with criticism, how to deal with failure. You know, if you get a C in your exam, you need a B to get to university, or, you know, you're not picked for the Sunday team, or you're not picked for a netball team. You've got to, whether you're 11 years of age, 21 or 51, there's your coping mechanisms. And I do really worry that there's some not so genuine people right now who claim these things. And I'm thinking, that's just life. That's just life. You know, when I hear about I couldn't deal with COVID, the lockdown, I'm thinking there's people who have lost family members. There's people who can't pay their bills. There's people who are losing their house. There's people losing their business, who can't put food on the table. That's problems. And as I say, people who genuinely have issues, we've got to make sure we offer all the help and support in the world. But, you know where I'm coming from. So in terms of our squad, we maintain contacts a lot with them. Throughout the lockdown, they had programs of work to do, and they reported in their GPS data, their running data, their loading data, and the staff and the players got together, were very tight. And I hope very much, Ben, there was no issues that I'm unaware of. But as I say, please, take that point right. My big fear going forward is that such a big thing's being made of it, and it's got to be people who are worthy of the cause and care and concern. And it can't be people who are just not failing or not being able to cope with really basic issues.
Definitely. Mark, just as we start to wind down now, I think it's a really good point that you've made there. But I'd just be interested to know now if we gave you 60 seconds now, and you could package away one golden nugget for our listeners, whether that be our coaches or just general listeners, what would that be?
It would be two things I mentioned to you earlier. It would be everything you do is underpinned by hard work. There is no shortcut. There's no taking a pro license tomorrow and suddenly you're working at Chelsea or Tottenham. It doesn't work that way. You've got to build that knowledge. So hard work underpins everything, and never underestimate the value of people skills. Never underestimate that. Whether it be an interview for you, whether it be you interviewing someone, whether it's you meeting a player, whether it's you meeting a family of a young player, the ability to interact and hold conversation and sell yourself and who you work for to the relevant person is so critically important. So hard work and people skills for me are the two, to use your term, nuggets that I would absolutely pass on.
Well, there you have it, guys. Another episode of the Coaches Network podcast, where our aim is to bring the world of athlete, talent, and personal development together to just one platform. And you can help us with that mission right now by sharing this episode or any of your favorite episodes with everyone that you can think of. You can tag us in those mentions as well on Instagram at the Coaches Network or on Twitter at the Coaches Net. We look forward to hearing from you. Let us know what you thought about today's episode. And until next time, guys, take care.